Good morning. Welcome to Grace Church. My name's Ashley. This is Ben. We're excited to worship with you today. So if you're able, if we'd like you to stand up with us as we prepare our hearts for worship, I will pray. God, thank you for getting us here this morning. Thank you for bringing us into a space where we can gather together. God, as things start to return to normal a little bit, I pray that you will help us remind us that being able to gather together is not something that's always been guaranteed, even in the last year. So, God, I thank you for this opportunity to be together. I thank you for this opportunity to sing and to lift praises as a congregation to you. I pray that you will be honored and glorified by the music that we all make together. Amen.
You are here, moving in our midst. I worship you, I worship you. You are here, working in this place. I worship you, I worship you. You are here, moving in our midst. I worship you, I worship you. You are here, working in this place. I worship you, I worship you. And you are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. And you are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop working. You never stop working. Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop working. You never stop working. Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop working. You never stop working. Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop working. You never stop, 'cause you are miracle working, promise keep, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. And you are miracle working, promise keep, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. 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 You waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. And you are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. And well, let's continue singing about God's faithfulness. He keeps every promise that he makes. We don't have to second guess his word because he always keeps it. So let's rest in his promises together this morning as we sing this song. Father, in kindness you have poured out grace. You brought me out of darkness, you have filled me with peace. Giver of mercy, you're my help in time of need. Lord, I can't help but sing. Faithful you are. Faithful forever you will be. Faithful you are. Oh, your promises are yes and amen. Oh, your promises are yes and amen. Beautiful Savior, you have brought me near. You pulled me from the ashes, you have broken every curse. confident is your faithfulness. I will rest in your promises. My confidence is your faithfulness. I will rest in your promises. My confidence, faithfulness. I will rest in your promises. My confidence is your so good to us. He always moves even in the things that we can't see, which is what we're about to sing about. We have confidence in his ability to see the unseen and to see our future and to give us a plan to prosper us and not to harm us. It's one of the things that he's promised to us. And so if you're trying to find some rest this morning, if you're trying to see the end of a situation that you just can't, for whatever reason, God's not letting you see it, maybe you've lost your way a little bit, take joy in the fact that he still sees it. He's got good plans for you, and he's going to get you through it. Be confident in that this morning as we sing this next song.
You're always moving. laughter scatters my enemies. You give me joy for my morning. Lift my head so I can see. All of heaven surrounding me. I'm confident your faithfulness will see me through. My soul can rest, my righteousness is found in you. In every moment left, in every bottle breath, let this be true. All my heart, for all my life belongs to you. I will win this battle with the strength of my own hands. You're the mountain mover, and only you can. I won't build my life on sinking sand. You're my hope forever, the rock where I stand. I will win this battle with the strength of my own hands. You're the mountain mover, and only you can. I won't build my life on sinking sand. to die for us, God. All of these songs are talking about confidence in your promise. And God, I pray that that confidence for each of us will start with the message of salvation and with the truth of your gospel. God, if we're feeling unconfident in that, or if we've never felt confident in that, I pray that you will use this time today to grow our confidence in that truth so that then we can become confident in the rest of your promises as well, so we can live a life that continually looks for and sees your faithfulness. Even when the circumstances aren't easy, even when there's suffering, God, grow our confidence in you and in your faithfulness. Amen.
Amen. You can go ahead and have a seat, and welcome to Grace Church. We are so glad. Let's give the band a hand. Didn't they do a good job of leading us in worship? Man, I am thankful for them leading me, and hopefully you as well, in worship week in and week out. And welcome to Grace Church, and we are so glad that you are here, whether this is your first time or whether you've been here for decades. We are glad that you are here, and we want to connect with you. We want to connect with you in a real way. We want to get to know you. We want to get to know you to get to know us, and we want to pray for you. And so the easiest way to do that is through the app. If you go to the Apple Store, the App Store for Google, and you can download that. You can download that app for free, or you can text us a prayer need. If you have a prayer need today and you need prayer, we want to pray for you. We want to pray with you. It is our joy and our honor and our privilege, as well as our responsibility, to pray for people that need to be prayed for, to bear one another's burdens. And so send that in, text that in. That's our confidential prayer number, or you can go to the website as well if you're joining us online. We're glad that you are joining us online. You can go to the website and do that. And if you want to get involved in Grace Church, the two easiest ways to get involved are through giving and serving. And here's what this really means, right? Like, if you want to be part of the mission here at Grace Church, if you want to be part of what God has called us to do, and what's God called us to do? Well, I'm here to tell you. God has called us to connect people to the life-changing grace of Jesus Christ. He has called us to pray for people, to reach out for people, to reach out to people. We've asked God to bring people into our lives, whether it's at work or in our neighborhood or at church or at an event or whatever it is, at our kids' soccer games. We've asked God to bring folks to us that are hurt and broken and wounded and far from God and running from God and have been hurt by church and church people. And then that we are asking God to bring them to us, not so we can say, oh, it's really bad, you've had a really hard life. It's like we're asking God to bring them to us so that we can be the conduit that connects them and be part of the group that connects them to this grace of Jesus Christ that is truly life-saving. I mean, it's true in my life, and if you're a follower of Jesus, I think you would probably say as well, at least I hope you would, that, man, when I discovered the grace of Jesus Christ, it changed my life, just like it did so many others. And we're going to read about Paul's life today, how the grace of Jesus changed his life radically. And so, if that's what we're called to do. And so, if you want to be part of that, getting involved through serving and getting involved through giving helps make that mission a reality, what God has called us to do. Couple of announcements. After the 4th of July is a Sunday. 4th of July is a Sunday. Hope to see you here if you're not out with your family doing other stuff. But if you come to church, we hope to see you here. We're going to have church. And after second service, after 10:30 service, we invite you to join us. We're going to go to Loma del Norte Park, which is just down the street and around the corner. I'm going to bring our massive grill, and if you want to pack a picnic, if you want to bring meat to grill, you can put it on the fire, and you can tend it yourself. I'm not here to try to insult anybody's, manliness or womanliness. Or I can cook it too, because I also like being in charge of the grill. So, but we will do that. So we'll have a grill there for you, and the kids can play, and we can all hang out. And maybe it won't be 147. But if it is, we'll sit in the shade. So So I invite you to do that. And as soon as service is over, you can go to the Connection Cafe. It is now open. It is now open. I have heard, and we haven't done any scientific studies, but I have heard it said that it is quite possibly the best burrito in all of New Mexico. So somebody, I mean, we have some agreement in here. So really go down there, get a burrito, and it's affordable. So it's like 2 meals worth of a burrito. So there you go. Well, I hope that you can join us for those two things. Well, today I'm going to ask a question, and I want you to answer. There's the recording, we're online, but nobody will know it's you, right? Just your neighbor. And so I'm going to ask you a question. Here's the question. So we're Grace Church, right? We're not legalist church. We are not rules church. We are Grace Church. But maybe some of you grew up in a very rules-oriented household, in a very religious family that had all kinds of rules and all kinds of things that you couldn't do. Or maybe you were like me and you grew up in not a very religious household, but you didn't also have a ton of rules. And you watched all your friends that couldn't do these things. And so now you have grown up and you're like, that rule was silly, right? Or I don't agree with that rule. Or maybe you didn't apply that rule to your own child. So what are some of those things? What are some of those things that we were told not to do that we really don't know why? Anybody? Come on. Dancing, right? Kevin Bacon proved to all of us that we could dance. It was in our souls. It was who we are. All right, what else? So there was dancing. What else? No meat on Friday, right? It's a different, see, I never even heard of that until I moved out to New Mexico and met some people that grew up Catholic. In Texas, every day of the week, most meals, right? So I heard no meat on Friday. It's like, that was sacrilege the other way. So what else? Don't drink, don't smoke, don't chew, and don't hang out with girls that do. That is absolutely, I was told that. What else? Anybody else? No what? No soda. Okay. Pray for you. So, I had friends that couldn't watch cable TV. For all you 20-year-olds, that's like the internet. Except you don't get to choose what's on, right? There's just more channels going. So all my friends, we had cable because we were, terrible people. But we had cable, and my friends would come over. It's like, hey, let's go hang out. Let's go play. Let's go do something. They're like, no, I'm watching TV. This is the best, right? And they would just watch cable all day. It's terrible, right? How about, I started going to church when I was 16, and all my friends were like, hey, do you listen to secular music? I'm like, no, but if you have a CD, I'll take a listen. I didn't know that meant just like good music, right? Like you couldn't listen to secular. They're like, you can't listen to secular music, Aaron. Like, yeah, but it's better than yours, right? So some of their parents went to a seminar that this church I went to for a little while held that said you couldn't listen to music with a 4/4 drum beat. Satan rules, right? As an adult man, this burned my biscuits, okay? As an adult man, I came into a church and a guy said, hey, we don't wear shorts here. And we're in Dallas. And I said, why not? It's hot. And they're nice shorts. My legs aren't causing anyone to stumble, I promise, right? Unless you covet big calves, and then you're going to stumble anyway. So, and he was like, well, we just don't do that. And I said, well, why? He's like, well, we just don't. I said, well, I'm gonna, right? So that's bad. That's bad on me. So, maybe you weren't allowed to, go to concerts or couldn't work on Sunday, couldn't read certain books or play games or watch movies with wizards or magic. Maybe you couldn't go to movies at all. I had a lady tell me one time, she said, I remember when the church finally said we could go watch movies, and that's all we did, right? Couldn't, whatever it was. A lady told me she couldn't go bowling because you might start smoking because they smoke in the bowling alley, right? Couldn't play Pokemon, or you couldn't say words like darn or dang. People would listen to albums backwards and try to find hidden messages. Right? You couldn't dress up for Halloween, but you could go to a fall festival because that's completely different. You couldn't have earrings, or you could only have one earring or two earrings, it's all these rules, right? It's all these rules. Now listen, let me tell you, most of these rules were put in place for very good reasons. Most of them were put in by, but they had reasons. They had reasons to do them. It was good intentions, and we can poke fun and all that stuff. But today we're going to talk about something serious, and that is religious hypocrisy. Religious hypocrisy is awful. It's a big deal. I would say that's one of the biggest problems that we have as followers of Jesus. It's one of the biggest problems we have that we face today in getting our message out, or even just admitting that you're a Christian in a lot of public settings, is religious hypocrisy. And I would say not just Christianity has to deal with religious hypocrisy. I think most religions have to deal with religious hypocrisy, but not just religions. I think systems and structures and companies, right, have to deal with it in just about every way, shape, and form. And here's what hypocrisy is. Here it is. It's summed up in a little saying my friend Josh Mears loves to say. Rules for thee, but not for me. Rules for thee, but not for me. And we see it in religion. We see it all over the place. We see it in politics. You ever seen it in politics? Maybe. But it's not just 2021, because we can think like, oh, it's so bad right now. It's so bad. It's so divided. It's so rough. Well, let's hear what Mark Twain wrote about politics. He says, look at the tyranny of political party, at what is called party allegiance, party loyalty, a snare invented by designing men for selfish purposes, which turns voters into chattels, slaves, and rabbits. All the while their masters are they themselves, shouting rubbish about liberty, independence, freedom of opinion, freedom of speech, and they are honestly unconscious of the fantastic contradiction in which they live. I mean, he didn't live, he's not alive still, but he could have wrote that about today. We saw it in COVID. Oh, man. In fact, one of my favorite Twitter threads is all the COVID hypocrisy, right? The mayor of Austin, Texas, gave his stay-at-home order in a timeshare in Acapulco. Don't leave the city, people. Don't leave your house unless you're me, because I really need a vacation. I mean, I think we saw it, was it the mayor of Denver gave his stay-at-home order. He says, guys and gals, stay at home, and that may mean you don't see your family. Make the sacrifice. And 6 hours later, he was on a plane headed to go see his family in Alabama. Rules for thee, but not for me. Hypocrisy. Hypocrisy. We see it all over the place. We see it in higher education. You ask these graduate assistants, these teachers assistants, hey, you want to be a professor, you got to run the gauntlet of poverty, and some have compared it to slave labor so that you might gain tenure. It's wherever you look, it's no different. In Christianity, we are not immune. In fact, Christianity, it runs rampant. In fact, we learned about it not long ago with a guy that I held in very high esteem, Ravi Zacharias. Ravi Zacharias, a great apologist, an Indian-Canadian who was one of the greatest apologists of the 21st century, a great speaker, a great teacher of the Bible, and we find out that he is a sexual predator. It's awful. It is awful. And as we look, we talk about our church, right? Our church is we want to reach out to people that are hurt and broken and lost and wounded and far from God and running from God. But people that have been hurt by church and church people, people that have been hurt by church and church people so often are hurt by religious hypocrisy. They are destroyed by religious hypocrisy. We get lots of them. It's this weird thing that when you pray for God for something, sometimes he just gives it to you. And so we've had folks come and like, man, I hate church, but I heard y'all are a little different, so I'm going to give it a shot. And then you hear their story, and you're like, wait, they did what? They're like, oh, yeah, that's just that was the first week. Wait, they did what? They did what? And hey, I'm sure there are people that have stories of Grace Church the same way. I pray not, but I know they do. But religious hypocrisy, it was like, yeah, they said this, and then they did this. They told me this, and then they did this. They made me do this, but then they themselves. And it destroys people's faith. Jesus had a lot to say about hypocrisy, and especially religious hypocrisy. Matthew 7, he tells people, don't be a hypocrite. Don't be a religious hypocrite, right? Don't try to deal with the small thing that your neighbor's dealing with while it's a big thing in your life. Don't try to take the splinter out of your neighbor's eye while you have a 2x4 stuck in yours. Quite literally, an $11 problem these days, right? That's the price of lumber. That's just the splinter's $11. So he says, beware of false prophets because they are wolves in sheep's clothing. They are hypocrites through and through, and it is all about rules for thee and not for me. He says, watch out for the hypocrites who fast and pray only to be seen and heard by others. They're not really doing it for the right reasons. They're hypocrites. Don't be like them. Don't be like them. In fact, the Pharisees, he talks a lot about the Pharisees. He calls them a brood of vipers. He calls them these are the religious leaders of the Jewish faith. He calls them whitewashed tombs. You are painting over death and destruction, trying to make it good, make it look acceptable. He says, you know what they do? They're so worried about getting the details right, they don't pursue justice and mercy. And even they come to him, and they go, whoa, Jesus, you and your disciples, why don't you guys follow the traditions of the elders? These human rules that you got to follow to be in good standing with the Jewish leadership. And he says, listen, you people are hypocrites. With your lips, you worship God, but your hearts are far from him. You worship God in vain because it all hangs on the teaching of human rules. If you look at Matthew 23, he is harsh. One thing that struck me is in Matthew 23, Jesus tells the Pharisees, he says, you will cross the ocean to make a single convert. So that starts off, you go, man, that's good. That's dedication. That is solid. Yes, I want that kind of passion and that kind of zeal where I would cross an ocean to make a single convert. He says, but when you do, you make them twice the child of hell that you are. Woo! Okay, well, that's the bad part. Don't do that. He says, because your religious hypocrisy, you win them to whatever. It's the old saying that says, whatever you win them with, you win them to. You win them with religious hypocrisy, that's what they are, and then they become twice the hypocrite you are. Strong words. Because religious hypocrisy is a big deal. And it's not just for 2021. And it wasn't just something Jesus talked about. It is something that the church had to deal with from the very beginnings. And if you'll open with me to Galatians, the letter written to the collection of churches in Galatia, where Paul is writing, he is dealing with this he's talking about religion to deal with. He says, you believed in this gospel. I shared this gospel with you, and it was the right, true gospel. It was from God, and that yet you turned to another gospel, let's be honest, is no other gospel at all. It's really just kind of the old way you were living. And so turn from that. And so Galatians is him begging and pleading and commanding and urging and trying to convince that these people need to turn away from this false gospel, which is also has a lot of this false hypocritical teaching to it. But to do this, so he's already kind of shared with them why in the first part of chapter 1, and he's going to get into his story. He said, okay, listen, let me try to convince you that the gospel that I gave you is true, and the gospel I gave you is real. And so he's going to share his story, and it's going to be up on the screens or in Galatians 1:11 if you're reading in your own copy of God's word. Galatians 1:11. For I would have you know, brothers, that the gospel that was preached by me is not man's gospel. It's not. Verse 12, for I did not receive it from any man, nor was I taught it, but I received it through a revelation of Jesus Christ, through God revealing it to me. And if you want to go back, you can read in Acts 8 and 9, Saul shows up to the scene of this Jesus movement. And he doesn't show up like, hey guys, I'm here to help. He shows up and he's murdering people. He's murdering people that are Christians. And he is dead set against this movement of Jesus followers. He is going to cleanse the Jewish people of this scourge that they have in their midst. And then it says that he encountered the gospel. He encountered God on the road. God came to him and said, Saul, right? That was his name before it changed. Saul, why do you persecute me? Why are you against me? And he goes blind, and then he meets some other Christians, and they explain the gospel, right? God makes a way that he learns the gospel. And when he does that, he is now able to see the truth, right? He's able to see both literally and metaphorically. His sight is given back to him, and he sees the truth of God. He says, God revealed this gospel to me. And you know it's real because my life, it had the power to change my life 180 degrees. He said it was confusing to people. It changed my life so much that it confused people. They were like, wait, he switched jerseys. Middle of the game. Right? He was on offense, now he's on defense. Like, what's going on? What's going on? And he said it was a big deal that it changed my life. He said, and when that happened, I started preaching the gospel. Once I knew it, I started preaching the gospel. He said, you know what I didn't do? I didn't go rush to Jerusalem to go talk to the leaders of this Jesus movement. I didn't go do that. He said, well, eventually I went. I went like 3 years later. But I didn't go and meet everybody. I really went to go meet Peter and James, the two. And so he spent a lot of time with Peter. He spent a little time with James. And those two were the guys that were essentially the leader of the church of Jesus. This movement, this Jesus movement. They were the main two leaders. He says, I wanted to get to know them. He said, but all these other leaders, and it was a big organization. You know, you could say what you want about big organizations, but if you read in the New Testament, God is adding thousands some days to the number of people who believe. And so to deal with that, you got to have a big operation, a big organization. He said, I met James a little bit, I met Peter a lot, and nobody else knew me. I didn't meet anybody else. He said, then I went back at the 14-year mark. I went back at the 14-year mark to Jerusalem because we had to get some things straight. And as an aside, he said, you know what? There were spies at this meeting. There were spies. Spies that were trying to root us out. And really these spies are these religious hypocrites because they're trying to stop us. And here's what they were trying to meet about, right? What Paul and the others meet in Jerusalem about. They're meeting because I want you to think about this. Christianity kind of hangs in the balance at this point. And Christianity has some thousands of people that have turned to it. But really, it is almost all a Jewish, it's a Jewish thing. It is Jews becoming followers of Jesus. A Jew from the line of David, right? I mean, in the Davidic, kingship. And the question on the table is Christianity really for everybody? Is it really for everybody? And and think about this. Until then, it's really been like, hey, it's for Jews. And so all these people that are already Jews, they just make the switch to this thing that lines up with what their scriptures say, and it fulfills a lot of it. It's like, oh yeah, this completes it. Is it for everybody? Because these spies don't want to make it for everybody. They want to make it about you being Jewish, and then if you want, you take if you want to be a super good Jewish person, you become a Christian also. And so really what they're saying is Christianity for everybody? Or really, does everybody need to become a Jew, and then if they want, they can do the extra credit work to become a Christian? But the answer is, we all found out. I mean, I don't think any of us that I know of have converted to Judaism just to become a Christian. I know I didn't. So the answer we find out is it is for everybody. It was for everybody. And he says, and we agreed on the message of the gospel, that it was for everybody. In Galatians 2:6, he says, and from those who seem to be influential. Now, he's kind of downplaying how just Peter's a big-time leader. And so is John, and so is James. But Paul is playing it down, not because they weren't in charge of a lot of things, not because they didn't have authority over things, but because, look, he says, whatever they were makes no difference to me because God shows no partiality. He's trying to show that the ground at the foot of the cross is completely level. That a person can have authority, they can have a whole lot of things going for them, but we are equals in Christ. He says, those, I say, who seemed influential added nothing to me. He says, we looked at their gospel message, I looked at my gospel message, they were the same. I didn't come to them to learn the gospel. God showed it to me. When it was the same gospel when we compared notes, it's the same gospel. And in verse 8 he continues, for he who worked through Peter for his apostolic ministry to the circumcised worked also through me for mine to the Gentiles. And when James and Cephas, that's Peter, and John, who seemed to be pillars, perceived the grace that was given to me, they gave the right hand of fellowship to Barnabas and me, that we should go to the Gentiles and they to the circumcised. Only they asked us to remember the poor, the very thing that we were eager to do. And he says, okay, so we looked and we compared notes and we found out that our gospel was not different in type, but it was different in focus. Our gospel, it was exactly the same, except they were called to go minister and to reach out to and convert Jews, the circumcised, Jews to Christians. He says, and I was called, with Barnabas as well, we were called to go and reach the Gentiles and convert them to Christianity. We were called to share the message. And so we are different in focus only, but not in type. Not the essence of the gospel is exactly the same. And he said, the only thing that they said to me that I should remember is to remember the poor, which I was already doing. I mean, there's a pretty good chance that in this instance, he was bringing an offering to the church in Jerusalem that was facing a famine. He's like, I was already doing it, so they told me nothing. He says, so God revealed this gospel to me, and I preached it. It's not another nuance. It's not an addition to. It's not, Jewish plus Jesus. It's not another idea. This gospel that I preach is not a great idea. It's not good advice. It's good news. Good advice and a good idea is, hey, you should do this. buy this thing, start this habit, do this, and you'll change. The good news is, it already happened. Jesus died for you. And he made a way for you to be right with God. And Paul says, this is the message, and it changed my life. And then we see hypocrisy. We see hypocrisy in verse 11 in chapter 2. Paul is continuing on with this story. But when Cephas, or Peter, that's Peter, came to Antioch, I opposed him to his face because he stood condemned. You go, man, that's harsh words. That is harsh words. For before certain men came from James, he was eating with the Gentiles. But when he came, he drew back and separated himself, fearing the circumcision party. So here is James. Here is Peter. He's in Antioch. He is mingling with Gentiles. He is eating with them. Okay, now it's a little different context. It doesn't mean like they're at a restaurant and he's got to order the fish because it's Friday, right? Like, doesn't mean that, and then they can order the hamburger. It's not that at all. The Gentiles are hosting him. And so he is eating food that he is not supposed to eat under the Jewish law. You read through Leviticus and Deuteronomy, and you see all the things that they can eat and can't eat. And he was eating all, he was eating who knows, right? He was eating a shrimp burger. I don't know. He is eating all this food, with bacon. He's not supposed to eat any of that stuff. And now he's eating it. And then some people from James showed up. These are followers, right? They are under his see. These are folks that are loyal to James. And they show up, and just their very presence, which Paul calls them the circumcision party. That's not a party at all to me. It's like an anti-party. Okay, so he says they're from the circumcision party. When these guys showed up, Peter, who was eating with these guys, another shrimp burger, please, with extra bacon. He's like, no, thanks. I'll take the salad. No. Do you have anything that's kosher? And he doesn't eat with them. He doesn't eat with them. He's being a religious hypocrite. And it says, verse 13, when the rest of the Jews acted hypocritically along with him. So even Barnabas was led astray by their hypocrisy. So when I saw the conduct that was not in step with the truth of the gospel, I said to Cephas, or Peter, before all of them, if you, though a Jew, live like a Gentile and not a Jew, how can you force the Gentiles to live like Jews, you hypocrite? I'm going to add that for emphasis. You say, man, that's kind of harsh.